Hello and blessings. My name is Rama. Depending on where you're at with your own personal practice, this session might be part practical and part informational. So don't feel like you need to do absolutely everything. Just take a mental note of how this session is laid out, how it looks, so that you can start to integrate it into your own practice effectively. Starting first to warm up the wrists. Hands would be planted with the fingers pointing to the outside edges of the mat. The space between the upper arm and the forearm, that's the antecubital space, but we call it the eye of the elbow. We'll keep these eyes turning in. We start to shift the shoulders side to side, trying to keep a little bit of protraction through the shoulders, pushing the back of your heart up to the sky. Keep that side-to-side motion. Start to add a semicircle oscillation. Hips go down to the heels, then back up to the hands. At this point, it should feel pretty good. Not so much intensity. Still moving with your breath. We'll work a few isolation drills to create more length through the wrist flexors. First one, we would start by keeping the right hand planted. And I'm thinking about actively pushing the ground away from me and bringing myself as far into extension. That means if my right hand is down, shoulders go as far to the right as possible. I'm increasing that angle. I'm pushing down. Left hand can be wherever's comfortable for you. Just working to feel some stretch. Now we go through a few PNF style activations. Think about actively pushing the fingers down, trying to flatten the middle knuckles into the floor. Really activate the hand, push, push, push. Take an inhalation. Exhale, relax the hand, go a little deeper into the position. Breathe a few moments, keep your hand relaxed. We'll do that activation one more time with the right arm. So again, staying at depth, think about pushing the hand down, flattening the fingers into the floor, pushing the hand, push, push, push. Big inhalation. Exhale, relax. Go a little deeper if you can. Once you find your end range of motion, can shift the shoulders a little forward and backward. It might feel nice as well with my opposite hand, my left. I'm pushing into the back of my right palm. That can help to create a little extra space in the wrist joint. Now, still working with the right hand for now, we'll release and plant the right forearm down on a 45-degree angle. With your left hand, we isolate, we ground, pushing the back of the right hand down into the mat. Now with this exercise, we're trying to create space in the wrist, in the joint capsule. So I think about grounding down through my right hand and almost like I'm trying to pull my elbow away and to create space in the actual wrist crease there. So from here, I move the elbow up and down. I'm working lateral flexion. This should feel really good. Not so much of a stretch going on, but we're just working to create some space. Roughly about 30 seconds to 1 minute for each of these wrist exercises. When you're ready, release. Take a moment to notice the difference between your hands, the difference between the right, which we just worked, and the left. Working now to balance through the body. The left hand plants, fingers are pointing off toward the left side. We shift the shoulders as far to the left as is comfortable. Trying not to bend at all through the elbow. Thinking about, again, pushing the earth away from you. A few nice breaths. And then we go through 2 of those PNF style activations. So think about, again, pushing the hand down, activating the fingers, try to squeeze the floor, push, push, push. Inhale. Exhale, relax the hand, go a little deeper. One more breath, and then we do our second activation. Last time, flatten the hand, push the fingers firmly down, push, 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 strong arm, big inhalation. Exhale, relax. Again, you can use your right hand, grounding a little bit, shifting shoulders forward and backward. Try to keep your palm ideally on the mat. The heel of my hand is lifting a little bit, but not such an issue if it's only lifting slightly. We definitely don't want to be here. This would be a totally different exercise. Second drill, still working on the left hand. Forearm is down on a 45-degree angle. With the right hand, we isolate. Think about, again, driving back through the elbow, trying to create space in the wrist crease, and then we move the elbow up and down. If it feels really good, you can always pause at one of the angles. Carry on when you feel ready. One more moment here. When you're ready, release. Give it a shake. See how they feel. Moving on to some exercises with the backs of the hands down. We're stretching now through the extensors. These are the muscles responsible for extending at the hand and finger. So for the extensors, we put the backs of the hands down with the fingers pointing in. Now, ideally, you're able to get the elbows completely straight. If there's any bend through your elbows, think about bringing your hands a little closer together. You can even overlap the fingers if that helps you get the arms completely straight. If on the other end of the spectrum you want more, you can take the hands farther away. You're increasing that angle at the wrists. We start first nice and static, holding a comfortable position. The eye of your elbow, this time it's looking forward towards the top of your mat. Take a big inhalation, push into the ground. Exhale, hips to heels, rotate the eye of your elbow in and down. Inhale, come forward, eyes of your elbows look forward. Exhale, hips to heels, eyes of the elbows in and down. 3 more times. Move with your own breath, your own tempo. Making any adjustments that you need to make this exercise more effective, more personalized for you. Very nice. Gently release your hips to heels, interlace the fingers, roll lightly through the wrists. We'll keep it there for mobility drills, but one last exercise to bring a little bit of heat into the hands, doing some first knuckle raises. First knuckle raises starting in a tabletop position. Nice protraction through the shoulders, strong position with the arms, elbows are straight. We start by lifting the thumbs off the ground, then articulating the palms all the way up and slowly lowering them back down. Lifting with strength, lowering slowly with control. It's effectively a forearm push-up. You should see that you have the shoulders either stacked directly over top of the wrists, or for more intensity, a little bit farther forward. This should be very difficult to get 15 repetitions. If you can do 15 and it's easy, you need to make it harder. So we can either make it harder by taking the knees farther behind. Eventually, these can all be done from your plank position as well. The idea is to keep the thumbs lifted. 15 times, then we relax and shake the hands. Feel a little bit more heat in the forearms. Moving on to the shoulders. So again, when we talk about Hollowback handstand, we need to find shoulder flexion, and we need to find it in an active way, primarily, because handstand, it's a very active thing. You're never just relaxing into an advanced handstand shape, or if you do, there's a good chance that you'll just hurt yourself and won't be able to practice for very long. So we'll start first with puppy pose, the passive version, just to get ourselves situated. Keep the hips stacked over top of the knees, hands reaching forward, lifted up on the fingertips. We melt the chest down towards the mat. If it feels good for you, you can also have some blocks underneath the hands, especially if you have a really flexible spine. And we'll go into the passive version. So remember here, we tuck the tailbone under, pull the ribs in towards the spine. I'm isolating through only my shoulders. My core, my torso, it's staying very strong in this position. Now you can think about the secondary points. I'm
trying to target flexion at the shoulders, but also elevation. So I'm thinking about creating length, like my hands are reaching forward while my hips are reaching back. Eventually, see if you can get the shoulders to block the ears. See if you can cover your ears with your shoulders. That would be full range of motion. A few more moments. Active puppy pose. Now pulsing between the two. So take an inhalation, stay very strong, very active. Exhale, relax the chest down toward the mat. Inhale, rounding through the upper back. Find that active version. Exhale, relax. Feel free to move with your own breath, your own tempo. A few more times going through this exercise. Beautiful. When you're ready, gently release. See how the shoulders feel. Give them a little shake. We'll move on to a slightly more advanced exercise for the shoulders. We talked about it before. This is the butcher's block. After puppy pose, we can increase that shoulder mobility by working our butcher block exercise. Now we'll be doing 3 sets of the butcher's block, and ideally you practice 60 seconds with roughly a 60-second rest in between each of these sets. The idea is that you make this suitable for your practice. So if 60 seconds is really difficult, do 30 seconds or maybe 45 seconds. Whatever you're working with, it should be difficult but not too difficult. So find out what works for you. We'll start here. Again, we find our position, elbows resting down, knees walking away. Find a distance from the knees that feels comfortable for you. And we want to go through these checkpoints. Squeeze the thighs, squeeze the glutes, tailbone under, navel to spine. I'm trying to puff up through the upper back. When it's time to release, gently walk the knees a little closer, release the arms, and relax. When you're practicing, again, the idea is to go through at least 3 sets of this type of exercise before we move on to the next portion of our practice. Once we've sufficiently warmed up through the shoulders, it's time to start warming up properly the actual handstand. So for me, once I've finished with wrists, with the shoulders, maybe I would do a little bit of core work. Most of the time I skip core work, to be honest. Don't really need it so much. I would move next to the wall. So doing at the wall some long static handstand holds. Going over this, of course, you need to have a wall. So if you're not near one right now, make sure that you move over to one. The first wall hold that we'll be working with is what we call a chest-to-wall diagonal hold. Now, as the name suggests, we're not holding a totally vertical, straight up and down handstand. We want to work to create a diagonal line. Still a straight line, but a diagonal line with the body. So for this exercise, we would want to position our hands about 12 to 16 inches away from the wall. The farther away you go, the more intense this exercise will be. The closer to the wall you go, you completely lose the strength aspect of what we're trying to develop with this particular technique. So aim for roughly 12 inches away from the wall. If you really feel like getting after it, you can be a little bit farther away. How we would set up is you start first facing away from the wall, planting your hands as close as you can get them while still being able to walk the feet up the wall. So I'm in this position, hands about 12 inches away, and you can see that when I'm starting here, my shoulders are stacked directly over top of the wrists. I want to create a diagonal line with the body. So what I think about doing is actually opening the shoulders and pushing them more towards the wall. From the top, my toes are pointed. My knees are strong. Thighs are strong. Tailbone is tucking under. Glutes are engaged. Core is engaged. Navel pulling in. And I'm thinking about pushing through the shoulders to create that diagonal line. So you can see in this position, that is one of the only handstand techniques that I will still always shake because it is very, very challenging. This exercise will never get easier, but one of the most effective wall holds for developing the strength through the shoulders. So this exercise, start with 30 seconds and do at least 2 sets. As it starts to get easier, you would gradually increase the time. 35 seconds on week 2, maybe 40 seconds on week 3. You move like this slowly, gradually increasing the intensity. The second wall hold that we work with, we stay with the chest to the wall, but now we're working primarily with the shape instead of the strength. This one is called chest to wall, nose, hips, and toes. The idea is that we're using this straight line, the straight, strong wall, to create that same shape with the human body. So we start by, and I'll mention that with this exercise, you do need to walk the hands in towards the wall. So it's not a beginner's exercise. If you feel that you have difficulty shifting weight to walk the hands in towards the wall, start first, just do again the diagonal. Do 3, maybe 4 sets with the chest to wall diagonal. But if you feel comfortable walking the hands in, then you can move to this second exercise. And it might be very beneficial if you're working in some partners. If you have another person for spotting, they can basically put the hands on your hips and kind of help walk you into the wall. This can be a nice thing you can do with friends. So how you would set up, plant the hands, legs up the wall, but this time walk all the way into the wall, as close as you can go. The idea here is that if I walk all the way in, it's not possible for me to do anything other than keep a straight line. I think about pushing my nose to the wall, pushing my hips into the wall, and pushing my toes into the wall. For many people, when you're holding a straight handstand, you have a little bit of a pike, as I'm showing you here, a little bit of a pike going through the hips. So it's this drill, pushing the pelvis into the wall, that will help you straighten out your handstand. From the top, toes are pointed, knees are strong, tailbone tucking under, navel pulling in, ribs pulling in, nose is touching the wall, and again we push through the shoulders. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, gently start to walk away and set the feet down. Now, with this exercise, because your hands are all the way in towards the wall, you need to save enough strength to come down with control. I've seen a few people holding, like they have a very strong mind, holding this exercise for too long, an extended period of time, and then just crumbling under the pressure. We don't want this to happen. Hold only as long as you can maintain good form. So again, start with 30 seconds, 2 sets. Yeah? Gradually start to increase the intensity over time. The last hold that we work with on the wall is a back to wall handstand. This should be the easiest of the 3. You see, we started first the diagonal, very, very intense exercise for handstand strength, then nose, hips, and toes. This is primarily for the shape of your handstand. And this last one is just kind of like a bonus set. It should be the easiest of the 3 because we've already done all of this work. We don't need to do anything too crazy. So for the back to wall, you would start facing into the wall. And the mistake that most people make when they're practicing a back to wall handstand hold on the wall is that they'll position the hands too far away. So if I have my hands all the way out here, this is about 16, 18 inches away from the wall, and I'm kicking up, if the hands are really far away, then there's possibility for stuff like this to be happening or stuff like this to be happening. We want to try to create as straight a line as possible. So if the hands are very close to the wall, then again, it's foolproof. It won't be possible for you to do so much arching through the back body. So what we do to set up is position the hands as close to the wall as they can comfortably be. And you'll notice that the head position will also have to change. Many people, when I see them kicking up into their handstand, head is sticking way out here. And obviously, if you're jumping to your handstand with the head in this position, you'll just douche yourself right on the wall. So you need to keep your head a little bit closer to the shoulders.
This is the position that we want to maintain through all of our handstand technique. So kicking up to the wall, hands are nice and tight. We find our shape, the heels are touching the wall. This one is, again, much easier, much more straightforward. We think about toes pointed, knees strong, tailbone tucking under, squeezing the glutes, pulling the navel in, pushing through the shoulders. Staying 30 seconds or so, and coming down.
Now, when I say 30 seconds or so, I really do mean 30 seconds. Quantify your handstand holds. I would usually take my phone, set it on timer mode, put it right on the floor just in front of my face so that I can actually see. In this way, you'll be able to track your progress. You're starting first 3 sets, these 30 seconds holds, then you start to gradually increase the intensity. So this is usually how I would start warming up the handstand. After all of these wall holds, again, diagonal, nose, hips, and toes, back to wall, then we bring it into the center of the room to start working on some of our entry techniques. After the longer holds at the wall, we can start working into our freestanding handstands. So I would like to go over the tuck entry to handstand, especially when we're talking about hollowback positions. The tuck entry is making a lot of sense because we will eventually be coming down into that tuck position. So it makes sense to start familiarizing ourselves with the tuck entry. Now for the tuck entry, we would start in a standing position. For me, most of the handstand entries that I do, they're starting from this standing position. The reason being is that if we are practicing the exact same entry every single time, eventually it just becomes an automatic part of the practice. You don't need to think quite so much. Having said that, there is also some benefit for a little bit of surprise. So learning to come in from different positions can be very cool. For today, we'll start in standing. To set up for the entry, from a standing position, we fold forward at the hips. The spacing of your hands, if you have the hands too close to the feet, I've never actually seen anyone do this, but there's a chance that you could knee yourself in the face when you're going to come into the entry. And also if you have the hands too far, you're basically in a downward facing dog. And if you're in a longer position like this, you'll have to jump with much more power in order to come to your handstand position. So generally speaking, come to your forward fold, gently reach the arms forward. Where they land, that is the setup for your tuck entry. Now, if you notice in this position, all of the weight is going through my legs. I actually want to jump off of the legs, and in order to jump, I need to have the weight going through my legs. So you're setting up in such a way that you could lift the hands, and the posture does not change at all. Now, what we want to think about doing is just jumping in such a way that we float the hips over the shoulders. This is the prerequisite movement. We call it a halfway hop. All you think about doing is bending the knees, little jump, floating your hips over the shoulders. Eventually, this will turn in to either a tuck, a straddle, or a pike entry to handstand. Once you find that moment of hang time, and notice my shoulders, I'm constantly pushing the earth away, constantly keeping the shoulders elevated. Once you're able to find that little halfway hop, keeping the shoulders elevated, then it's just a matter of tuck position and straightening the legs all the way up. So once we find our handstand, we're holding here a few moments and coming down the same way. Tuck position, knees to the chest, straighten the legs, landing soft. Can roll up, relax. Before we get into the hollowbacks, just to warm up the skill, we go through at least 3 entries. You can also do 3 split leg entries, 3 tucks, 3 straddles, 3 pikes. In my own personal practice, I'll also work some sevens, which are actually not a hollowback. That's another common misconception currently on Instagram. Once you feel that your body is sufficiently warm, then we start to get into the actual hollowback. So again, entries first, then you start to work on your hollowback technique. When it comes to the hollowback, we work it freestanding. It can be a little bit difficult to work hollowbacks without a partner. This is like one of the most valuable resources, one of the most valuable tools that you may or may not have access to. Learning how to spot someone. Keep them in balance. They can start to figure things out on their own. This is one of the quickest ways to start to access these postures. There's a second program coming out on OMSTAR's Effective Assists. In that session, we talk about how to spot skills like these hollowbacks. So you can teach someone how to spot you. It will make a massive, massive difference in your practice. When it is time to actually get into the hollowback holds, we again work from that tucked position. As I said, you can explore different shapes, but more often than not, they will be less effective at allowing you to master the skill. If you really just want to master the skill, you kind of need to train it intelligently. And more often than not, that means removing your desires to do crazy things. Remove all these crazy desires from the equation. Focus on basic skills. That's how you'll get there. So we move through our tuck entry. We find the tuck position. Again, knees all the way in towards the chest. Start to open through the shoulders. Stay here. Especially if you have a freestanding handstand, don't worry about going all the way into your hollowback. Just stay here and breathe. Maybe eventually you can bring the knees a little bit away from the chest. You see how that brings the bend more into my upper back, or into my middle back as I go farther, farther, farther. And I bring it back. 3 times working through these hollowbacks. 3 times after your entries, tuck position. Start to hollow out, come back. Again, don't go too far with these drills. If you're practicing hollowback handstands and the next day you'll feel just like a bag of crap, basically, completely beaten up, you're working too hard. You're doing too much too soon. Take a step back, work on these basic exercises, and understand that there is such thing as too much training. Now, having said that, of course we want to have some goals. We want to be able to take our practice from basic tuck position to eventually a straddle, or to a straight leg hollowback, to other types of variations. So the idea is that these variations, they just come with time and exposure. Yeah, you could focus only on the tuck position and you would get everything that you need to be able to naturally perform these other hollowback skills. Of course, because this is how to hollowback, this is a session on hollowbacks, we kind of have to go over some of the other variations. But just understand that the tuck position is what I want you to train. These other ones, they're only for Instagram. They're only for showing off with your friends. If you really want to improve the posture, just focus on the tuck position. Okay? So if we wanted to work some of the other skills, the technique is the same. Come up first always to your straight handstand. Start first with that gold standard. Talking a little bit about the straddled position. Once you come up to your handstand, you would start by opening the straddle. You can either go full or half straddle. Here you see I'm going into a full straddle. And the way that I would enter is, again, I start by first pushing through my shoulders, piking a little at the hips to make it slightly easier. And I focus more so on opening through, again, the chest and upper back. All of these shapes, they're purely byproducts of observing this basic tuck technique. So like literally any hollowback skill that you can think of, once you're able to do successfully a tucked hollowback, then you can start to play with all of these other skills. Just know that they will get progressively more intense, progressively more demanding on your body. All of the hollowbacks that I like to do, they are somewhat symmetrical, right to left. So you'll very rarely see me coming into like a stag leg hollowback. I'll show you an example of stag leg hollowback, and it's something that you absolutely can do, but I wouldn't recommend it because we tend to favor only one side, and if you favor only one side, you'll develop a lot of little imbalances, especially through your spine and your hips. So these stag leg positions, something like this,
we start to extend. Have a look at my hips. The hips are not square, and I can feel it. I'm sure my head is probably a little bit red right now as well. When you start to extend more through the legs, yeah, that extension is going into the lower back. It's making it very, very difficult to breathe, to control the posture, especially if you have a lot of flexibility. Like there, I'm really resisting the back bend because I don't want to damage this area. I want to be able to do these things for a long time. So this, for me, is all about Hollowback work. There are no secrets. There are no pills to success. It's all about just enjoying these basic activities. When you want to show off a little bit, you can show off a little bit. But for the most part, real improvement, real growth, it's coming from focusing on these fundamental activities. Now, one important point to talk about with the tuck position is that you need to be able to get the knees all the way in towards the chest. And for many people, that means improving your active flexibility. Okay? Active flexibility through the hips. And this is something that you can most certainly do at the end of one of your training sessions as a way of first conditioning and then also relaxing after all of these intense handstands. We would focus on a few active and passive variations on the seated forward fold. So first, the active version. We would plant the hands roughly at the region of the knees. And in this exercise, you try to think about keeping your chest lifted. Try to keep your spine lengthening forward. Try not to do any of this rounding and slouching backwards. So we try to stay nice and lifted. Squeeze the knees. You see that when I squeeze my knees, the heels actually lift up off the ground. And I'm thinking about keeping the navel pulling in and up. With an inhalation, I lift the legs as high as I can. I exhale to lower. If I want to make it more intense, my hands go closer towards the heels. Here, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. 10 times like this. Once you hit 10, then it's time to fold into a more passive position. Towards the end of one of these more intense Hollowback sessions, I always like to take time just to breathe, maybe a forward fold, maybe a classic shoulder stand position. But you can really feel the difference between passive and active flexibility. Passive flexibility, it's just so enjoyable, so relaxing. We're able to stimulate parasympathetic nervous system, allow the body to kind of find that more peaceful state. But with the active versions, it's very intense, very challenging. But for Hollowback, what you need is the active flexibility. Okay? So this session, again, it's going to look totally different for you depending on your current level. We start first warming up the wrists, creating a little length and a little strength. Then we move to the shoulders, finding first more flexion and ideally also more elevation, reaching the shoulder all the way up. Once we work through the shoulders, we can take some time to engage the core, a little core activation exercises if you feel that that's one of the weaker links, weaker points of your practice. Then we start to warm up the handstand with some longer holds at the wall. Entry technique, split leg entry 3 times, tuck entry 3 times. If you're working with them, maybe some straddle jump, maybe some pike jump. Then you get into the actual Hollowback handstand. Again, I say this, it is not complicated. It is not difficult, but it just involves you to train more intelligently, to focus more on these basic activities, basic exercises. This is the way that I have personally been developing my Hollowback. This is the way that I hope you continue to develop your Hollowback as well. This is what we have for today. Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste.